Hello again. Our second presenter is Alejandro, and it's my pleasure to introduce him. I think often when we start research projects, even unconsciously, we might be trying to get results that we want to hear. And I really admired Alejandro throughout this process for looking at a topic that is very near and dear to him, that he has a very strong relationship to, and looking at it really honestly and trying to figure out how it might impact him. And as you'll see, also trying to figure out how his research could impact other people like him. So you'll see that in the results of his project, which was also very time consuming. So he'll talk a little bit about that, but that's another thing I commend him for, is persevering through a project in a medium that was much, much more meticulous and time consuming than he could have anticipated. So without further ado, here is Alejandro.
How are you guys? So, throughout my life, I've been surrounded by technology. It has helped me learn and grow, but unintentionally, it has helped me waste away the days to video games. Late in my sophomore year, I realized I was spending way too much time playing video games. I was curious if playing so many video games had affected me in any way. So I decided that if I was already going to spend my time playing video games, I might as well learn what I was already doing to myself. After I had done some research about this topic, I decided to focus on the effects of video games on humans, effects of video games on myself. The challenges I faced when answering this question was first grappling with multiple topics, such as visual effects, social effects, and not even to mention addiction or violence. Some difficulties I had with my research was also understanding the technical language used in many of the academic articles published about this issue. And just a little warning, there are going to be graphic images used in this presentation. So yeah. So going on to my actual question here, as you can see, it was how do video games affect me physically and mentally? That was my question for the project. And now we will go on to the effects, the three main effects that I found. So, the three main effects that I found, the three main categories of effects I found were psychological, social, and physical. So now we will go on to the positive effects that come out of video games. And they fall under these three categories. Right. Visual effects. Video games usually depend on a player using visual skills to achieve objectives. Repeatedly playing a game can hone these skills. Executive function. Now, as defined by Harvard University Center on Developing Child, executive functioning is the mental processes that enables us to plan, focus attention, remember instructions, and juggle multiple tasks successfully. So, when playing video games, your ability to focus and also the ability to change between, okay, what do I have to do now in the video game? Do I have to focus on an objective? Do I have to challenge myself? Do I have to think and compute about this or that and this event happening during the video game? Switching between those tasks is a lot quicker. Now, another visual effect that video games have is improving your reflex time and hand-eye coordination. In certain genres of video games, reaction times are necessary to play the game. Repeatedly playing this game will hone these skills, and video games are actually among the very few reaction time trainers that actually decrease reaction time without losing precision. And also in terms of hand-eye coordination and motor control, Emily Hughes, who is a scientific researcher who has done a lot of experiments and studies on video games, also adds that, similar to hand-eye coordination, fine motor control can be improved, and this is because with video games you're taking an input from a screen, visualizing it, and then outputting it onto a control, hand-eye coordination. The last visual effect that we will talk about is spatial awareness. In 3D video games, people usually have to navigate around 3D environments. Repeatedly doing this can help increase people's spatial awareness, improving distance, location, and velocity calculations, making the person more adept, perceptive, and maneuverable in 3D spaces. As you can see in this picture, this is from a 3D first-person shooter. Notice the lighting's a bit off, but in this picture, there are multiple 3D platforms that you can see. And the player also is seeing a lot of enemy projectiles and friendly projectiles. So this whole time when they're playing, they have to judge distances, they have to judge, okay, where am I in the map? Where am I right now? Where can I go? Where can I run to? Where can I shoot from? Where is there cover? Etc., etc. Now moving on to the next big effect, we have medical uses, or not actually effect, just medical uses. A plethora of video games have been created to deal with pain management. For example, Snow World, a virtual game, has been effectively. Also, video games can be used just as plain old educational tools. There are many educational games targeted at young children through adults. These video games can cover a wide range of topics and have been shown in some circumstances to be more effective than textbooks or seminars. Our next effect is social effects. Now this is the part where a lot of you are saying, oh, he's going to be talking about the loner in his basement playing video games all day. Well, not exactly. Video games, many video games can be played online, allowing people to socialize in gaming communities, building friendships online. People have been known to use video games in a way to escape their real-world social status, allowing them to become any race, gender, and physical form they want online. Also, for those people who have weak social skills, the online anonymity can help because it really doesn't. It makes it so that there's not a lot of risk in going out and socializing in these video games. All right. Now that we're done with the positive effects, let's go on to the negative effects, which I can tell you are the much more publicized side of video games. And to start it all off, we have addiction. Video games train the player in such a way that certain visual and audio cues can make the player's brain release dopamine, which is actually the same chemical that is released when someone takes drugs. In South Korea, they have even created a law restricting the online video game usage among adolescents and teenagers. And if you guys want to, just look up South Korea and just look up video games. There's a plethora of information you can gather on it. It is a very, very cool topic to look on. Now, the next negative effect we will talk about is how it can give you bad lifestyle and physical harm. Video games do not require that much physical movement, which can promote a sedentary life, and in very rare cases, can lead to obesity and other health issues. This includes tendinitis and carpal tunnel. Tendinitis is actually a very cool syndrome that you can get. It's when you get the actual syndrome is when you're using a video game controller and your thumbs actually have to do a lot of very random and sporadic movement, and this can actually end up giving you tendinitis. It was so prevalent back in 1997 that it was actually coined Nintendinitis in terms of because of Nintendo. Now let's get to the big effect, the one everyone knows about: violence. Many video games include mechanical and graphical violence, and through playing the game, many people may associate said violence with accomplishment. This is mostly seen in first-person shooters, where people are trained to constantly scan an area for enemies or threats. This can lead to people associating accidents in real life to hostile intents, increasing their hostility bias. Video games also can normalize violence and often reward it. And now our last negative effect we will be looking at is the negative side of social effects. Online video games can become addicting, like we've discussed. And in said games, players are often able to socialize online rather than offline. This can lead to some people replacing real-life friends and social acquaintances for online ones. If enough time has passed, people who play video games can lose their ability to socialize in the real world. But mind you, this is mostly seen in very addicted cases where people are playing 8 to 12 hours a day of video games. Whew. Now that we've talked about my research findings, let's go on to the actual project. So for my project, I decided to create a video geared towards adolescents and teenagers who are inside the gaming community. I learned how to animate using Gmod, which in itself is a modification of a video game called Half-Life 2. In Gmod, you are able to spawn ragdolls, as you can see over there with the man in the red jacket trying to grab that sandwich. He's a ragdoll, a player which you can manipulate. Props, you can also spawn props and lighting. I use this to animate a Gmod video, or what is also known as a machinima. And the actual definition of a machinima is the use of a computer graphics engine to create a cinematic production, so like what Pixar does. I wanted the video itself to act as a form of PSA for younger gamers, and this tied in well with the Gmod aspect, since many of the people who watch Gmod videos are gamers. Honestly, I had not realized how much work and effort went into creating one of these, even just 1 minute of a Gmod video. So this is why my project has been delayed until now. Because just a few seconds of video can take 30 minutes to an hour to animate fully. So for the actual project, what I am going to show you is the video that I have so far. I will be working on it into the future and hopefully finishing it. But what I will show you right now is the explanation of the negative effects of video games, and yeah. And just a quick little tip. In the video, we are going to be following a main character called Heavy, while a narrator shows him the effects of video games. All right. Did you guys hear it?
Hello everybody, and welcome to a small block of Teamsville. It is a happy place, filled with happy people going about their lives. However, today is a very special day for one person. This is Henry. He is an average person enjoying some television. However, his life will change forever when he sees this next commercial.
Good start. All of you are babies. Have not seen many of these. All of you are dead. So much blood. Nice shot. You got is unfair to tiny baby hands. This is the best thing! It is the best thing!
Are you going to buy that game, Harry? Harry, have you ever played a video game?
No!
Well, Harry, there are some things you need to know about video games before you buy one.
What?
Let's take a look at this video game on your computer. Wait, Harry, look at it, CSRB rated.
Stop it! Stop!
Look, Harry, it's rated mature.
How could this happen?
Well, Harry, this game includes violence, blood and gore, sexual themes, nudity, drug references, strong language, use of tobacco, and more. No buts, Harry. Playing or purchasing the right video game is important, because these games can affect your personality. Let me explain. You see, Harry, I want to show you a few things. Video games can be fun, but they can also affect you in ways you might not be prepared for. Here we have Miranda and her brother, Tom. Miranda and Tom both like playing video games, but they both play different types of games. Miranda plays violent games with a lot of blood and guns in them. Games like Counter-Strike Global Offensive.
It's starting to bore me how much you suck.
On the other hand, Tom plays different games, ones with less violence. Like Donkey Kong Country. You see, Heavy, when people play violent video games, they themselves become more aggressive. Well, Heavy, research shows that when people play violent video games, they get used to the violence because the game rewards the player if they are violent. Also in most violent video games, the player must constantly watch for enemies, and this can teach the brain to be more violent to other people in real life. Let's see how Miranda and Tom's video game choices affect them in real life. Tom is heading down the street when suddenly... Now, let's see what Tom does.
Excuse me.
Sorry.
Very good!
Now let's see how Miranda does.
You suck!
While Tom just thought that it was an accident, Miranda actually saw it as a hostile action. Miranda plays violent video games, right? Well, research shows that these games wire her brain towards a world where other people's actions are often hostile rather than helpful or accidental. For instance, in school, kids who played violent video games were more likely to get in physical fights than those kids who did not play violent video games. Her brain thought that a man on the street was like a video game enemy and had purposely bumped into her.
Oh, this is bad!
Yes, heavy it is. And there are also other harmful effects of video games as well.
Not good!
Video games can also affect your social abilities and social life.
How could this happen?
Well, heavy, some video games come with online features, allowing people to communicate with each other.
You got mail.
But when somebody plays for too long, the player can start replacing real-world friends with online ones. And when real-world interactions are dropped, the player can slowly lose their social skills and abilities.
Hello, Mike.
Heavy, that is not funny. The last effect we will talk about is addiction. Heavy,
Look at me! Look at me!
Heavy, this is not an appropriate time to play video games. Give me that controller.
Yet!
Heavy, addiction is a big issue. Addiction to video games is similar to any other material addiction. When a player plays a video game and does well, their brain releases chemicals to feel good when they are rewarded by the video game. Sometimes players become more and more tolerant to these chemicals, leading to the player playing for longer and longer amounts of time in an attempt to receive the same release of chemicals. This can lead to the player becoming addicted to the video game, neglecting hobbies. Work. And even going so far as to neglect family.
Oh, wait here. There was a slide in my PowerPoint for questions. Questions? Yeah.
The research done investigating how bathtub and playing that snowy game affecting bird.
Snow?
Yeah, that game. How it can help burn victims overcome pain. Was that same test done without the bathtub?
It was.
And what were the effects of it?
It still was significant. Because if you want me to go into further detail, the main reason why it acted like a painkiller was because video games are pretty distracting. as it turns out. So when they're actually playing this game, they have visual stimuli, and also the bathtub adds to it by adding physical stimuli. But you have visual stimulus. There's a 3D world. It also during this game, it's technically a first-person shooter. So you also have to like do all this visual stuff. So it's very distracting, and they just have them play it while they're skin graphing or doing whatever they need to do. Next question.
So this was a really, really long, month-long project, and it took a lot of patience. And I'm wondering what you learned about yourself throughout this entire process that you can, and would you actually apply to something else?
I guess not to bite off more than I could chew. I realized that I try and go for really big projects. Like I say, I'm going to do this, and then I realize, wait, I can't do it in the first place. So just being a bit more self-aware is what I've taken away from this project. Self-aware of my abilities and also the time that I have. Yes. Yeah.
So you mentioned the positive effects of being in an online community. What about communities that are like terrible, where you have like, you know I'm talking about, where gaming communities are full of people.
You mean like acidic gaming communities like CSGO,
Yeah, where
League of
they're
Legends? Yeah.
basically abusive online.
Well, I didn't actually go into more depth about toxic community groups. However, I will tell you that if people who are getting positive social gains are probably not playing those games. They're probably playing more online RPG kind of games where there's a lot more people and there's a gaming community that actually cares for the game and it's not very competitive. So yeah, that's basically.
You mentioned a lot first-person shooters and other games of that sort.
Mm-hmm.
Where do simulator games fall into this category?
Well, simulator games is not a genre, but simulator games can come in many different forms. They can be first-person shooters, they can be MMOs, MMORPGs, MMOFPSs, they can be RTSs. Basically, they could be whatever. They could be a whole bunch of genres. When you say a simulator game, it just means you're simulating something. Now, you can have, let's say, you can simulate a ball dropping by having a 2D representation of that, or you could simulate a ball dropping by having a 3D first-person shooter. You can run around the ball as it's dropping. There are many ways to have simulator games fall into different genres. Yes?
Reese, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think what he was getting at is games like the Bus Simulator or Surgeons Simulator that are actively trying to portray like a small slice of something.
Well, I didn't exactly, I don't exactly understand the question that much in terms of like, where do they fall under in terms of their effects, is your question? Well, they just fall under the same categories as most of the other games. I would have to say simulator games might introduce a puzzle aspect to it, which can help with, video games can also help if you're playing a puzzle game. It can help with logic, and also it can help with memory. So simulator games might fall under that category too. Let's see, let's take another one. Yeah, Morgan.
You talked a lot about like violent first-person shooters, I believe, a lot.
Yeah.
This is kind of similar to Reese's question. Do the negative impacts that you described, as far as people feeling violent, and then like you showed like the more the non-violent games, and the people seem less violent, I guess. How do those compare? I was a little confused on the positive side of things. Do the same positive effects carry over?
Same positive effects of
For both the violent and non-violent games, do they share common positive effects?
They do. Visual effects are always seen in video games, especially video games that are faster paced. That's a positive effect that you will always see in video games, and it's more prevalent in like action games and first-person shooters. But yeah, that's one. Like broad spectrum.
Alejandro, unfortunately, we have to cut questions off, but please do find Alejandro to ask the questions that you have. And thank you all so much for being here, and congratulations.